You think you struggle with silence. Wrong. You struggle with what silence reveals, because when nothing is said, there is no refuge. No tone to soften judgment, no words to steer perception, no reaction to disguise intent. Only you, standing naked before reality, while others decide what you are worth. And that terrifies people who survived by adjusting. You learned early that words are tools, not for expression, but for regulation. You speak to stabilize situations, to ease tension, to regain leverage. You speak to ensure events do not drift beyond your influence. That impulse isn't set communication. It's says control-seeking behavior. If this statement irritates you even slightly, good discomfort is the sound of illusion cracking. Emotionally stable people do not feel the urge to defend themselves from ideas. Only those whose identity is fragile feel attacked by accuracy. Let me strip away the pretense. You are not listening casually. You are measuring, comparing, testing whether these words align with a pattern you already noticed in yourself. That is why you didn't set leave. And if this resonates, do not explain it. Explanation is emotional leakage. Silence is containment. Now understand this clearly. Most people misunderstand emotional silence. They think it is about restraint, about appearing calm, about suppressing reaction. That is beginner thinking. Real emotional silence is not something you perform. It is something that exists when nothing inside you demands response. And that state is rare. Most humans are internally screaming even when externally quiet. They rehearse arguments. They imagine judgment. They prepare defenses before attacks even occur. So when they stay silent, it is not silence. It is suppression. And suppression always leaks. Through posture, through timing, through micro-expressions. Others feel it instinctively. That is why false silence never holds power. Because it still needs something. Here is the truth. Most people cannot swallow. Emotional silence is not strength. It is lack of dependency. You are silent not because you are disciplined, but because nothing in you needs to be acknowledged. No hunger to be understood. No urge to be validated. No impulse to correct the narrative. And that absence destabilizes people. Because they cannot locate you. Humans are trained, quietly and thoroughly, to externalize their emotional state. Approval becomes fuel. Reaction becomes reassurance. Engagement becomes proof of existence. Remove that feedback loop and anxiety surges. That is why silence feels heavy. Not because it is empty, but because it exposes how much of one's identity is built on response. This is where most fail. They try to use silence as a tactic. They withdraw. They go cold. They wait. The moment you wait, you have already lost. Because silence with expectation is still noise. Let me say something that will offend weak minds. If silence feels powerful to you, you do not possess it yet. True emotional silence feels neutral. No satisfaction, no superiority, no rush, only clarity. And clarity does not seek witnesses. Here is the deeper layer. If you stayed until now, it means you are not afraid of silence. You are afraid of what comes after. Because silence removes leverage, you can no longer manipulate outcomes through reaction. You can no longer steer perception in real time. You can no longer soften consequences with emotion. So you are forced to rely on something else. Positioning, preparation, consistency. Silence exposes whether you actually possess these. That is why most people break it. Not because they are impulsive, but because silence enforces accountability. No emotional alibi. No reactive excuse. Only results. This is the philosophy most never reach. Silence is not disappearance. It is internal settlement. When presence no longer requires performance, people begin to project. They fill the gaps with their own insecurity. They reveal themselves faster, Not because you intimidate them, but because you refuse to participate in emotional noise. Systems collapse when someone stops feeding them. That is why silence unsettles. Not because it dominates, but because it refuses. Remember this. Silence is not weakness. It is the weapon of those who think before they act. The strongest minds do not waste words proving their wisdom. They let the ignorant expose their own foolishness. This is not poetry. It is strategy. You do not struggle with silence. You struggle with relinquishing perception management. Once you stop correcting, once you stop explaining, once you stop emotionally responding where no response is required, silence ceases to be a tool. It becomes your default state. Not empty, not cold, efficient. Words give people something to react to. Silence gives them nothing, and the human mind cannot tolerate nothing. So when you remain emotionally silent, people do not meet you. They meet themselves. Their impatience surfaces. Their insecurity spills out. Their assumptions rot in the open. That is why silence feels confrontational without aggression. You are not attacking. You are not defending. You are not explaining. You are letting reality stand without adjustment. Most people break silence because they crave immediate understanding. They want control over interpretation. But emotional silence trades short-term comfort for long-term authority. You stop negotiating your presence. You stop correcting misunderstanding in real time. You allow meaning to settle naturally. And when you finally speak, it does not sound reactive. It sounds inevitable. That is the Fang Yuan principle. Not louder, not colder, unmoved. If you understand this, do not announce it. Those who need to declare power do not possess it. Just observe today how often you speak to adjust reality, instead of letting reality expose itself. That awareness alone sharpens you, and when you are ready to respond, you already know the correct answer. Say nothing, except once. I see everything. I say nothing.